Good evening, everyone. Tonight's shiur is called The Truth About Lies. There was one time a Bible teacher who wanted to impress the importance of truth and wanted to teach him an important lesson on truth and not to lie. And so at the end of the class, the teacher said that tonight for homework, I want everybody to please read Leviticus chapter 250, verse 75. The next day, when the children came back to class, the teacher said, I'm now about to give my important lesson, and about the concept of truth and the concept of keeping away from lies. And did everybody please read for homework the Leviticus, what was it again? Chapter 270, verse 179. And all the kids raised up their hands besides one. And the teacher said, very good. There is no chapter 175, verse 57. And that is my first lesson in telling the truth. So what is this concept of truth? And what is the concept of lies? We know that the Torah warns us. It is the only mitzvah that the Torah tells us, midvar sheker tirhak. Not only are you not allowed to lie, you must distance yourself from any matter of falsehood. Midvar sheker, any matter of sheker, any matter of falsehood, we have to distance ourselves. It's the only mitzvah that we have such a thing. Furthermore, we know that the sages tell us, Hotmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu emet. The seal of God is truth. So obviously the concept of truth is paramount, something that is very important, something that represents the very seal of God. The seal is the imprint of a king, the signet, the signature, the representation or the symbol of the king. Truth is the symbol of the King of all kings, of God. So it's extremely important. And on the flip side, the concept of falsehood and lying, one has to distance oneself. Why is that so? And why does it seem to be, in a way, more so than perhaps other mitzvot that we have to obviously not transgress? Furthermore, there's a very interesting story. The Gemara tells us of a very interesting story that there was a town, and this particular town, not one person died prematurely or young. Everybody lived to a ripe old age. Why did they merit to live to a ripe old age? The sages tell us because they were very careful in telling the truth. They were scrupulous. They were extremely, extremely careful. To the extent that there came a righteous person to this town to live amongst these people, and after a while, one of his children died prematurely. And they investigated. Nobody in this town ever died prematurely. They investigated and found that this particular person was a righteous person, but he wasn't as careful as with the concept of truth or saying a white lie as they were the people of this town. And one time, in order to avoid a situation, he sort of bent the truth a little bit. And in this town, this was viewed something that was extremely unacceptable and brought about a great punishment. What's the connection between truth, long life, and the concept of lying and death? So let us attempt to answer these questions and join everything together. We mentioned before that the seal of Hashem is emet, truth. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot tells us, a famous Gemara, many people have heard of it or learnt it. The Gemara says that emet yesh la raglaim, sheker en la raglaim. The very shape of the letters of truth connotes its very essence. And if you were to create the letters three-dimensional, Aleph has 2 feet, Mem has a base and another foot, another leg, and Taf has 2 feet. So if you were to make them three-dimensional, they would stand up, which indicates that they endure. And the truth is, if you look up the definition of truth, truth is something that endures. Truth is something that exists forever, not dependent upon circumstances, not today is true, tomorrow it's not. If you have a look at the word truth itself, emet, Aleph, Mem, and Taf, Aleph is the first letter, Mem is the middle letter, Taf is the last letter, which means that it endures. It exists throughout. Sheker en la raglaim, the Gemara says, Sheker has no feet, because if you were to create them three-dimensional, the Shin comes to a point, to one leg, the Kuf comes to one point or one leg, and the Resh comes to one point and one leg, so it would fall apart, showing that it does not endure. Some of the commentaries explain to us that part of the concept of not telling lies is not to cause damage and harm to other people. We know that we have mitzvot that are associated with us and Hashem, and we have mitzvot that are associated with us and human beings. And part of the concept of not telling lies is not causing harm to other people, not misleading and being deceitful to other people that will cause them ultimately harm. Why do you lie? You delight to deceive them. But obviously, because of all the above things that we mentioned before, Hotmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu emet, the seal of God is truth, it obviously goes beyond and deeper than that. Also, the very word emet, Aleph, Mem, and Taf, is the numerical value of 444. 4 plus 4 plus 1 equals 9. Any number is the number 9 is the symbol of truth because it is a number that endures. It is the only number that will always equal itself. 9 times 2 equals 18. 8 plus 1? 9. 9 times 3 equals? How much? 7 plus 2 equals 9. And so on and so forth. Every single time you multiply something with 9, when you get back, you will always get back to a single digit. It'll always be 9. It'll always break down to the single digit 9, which shows, and 9 is the numerical value in single digit of truth, of emet. That is a symbol that it always endures, always exists. The Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us that there are 4 that will not merit to see the divine presence. One of the 4 that does not merit to see the divine presence is those that tell lies. What is the connection between receiving the divine presence and telling lies? So the matter is as follows. Why is it that truth is the seal or the symbol of God's seal and falsehood doesn't endure? And because falsehood is the exact antithesis of godliness. Godliness, by definition, is something that endures. It's true. Therefore, it endures. And therefore, anything that is connected to godliness connects himself to the truth. Etz hayim hi lamahazikim ba. The Torah is a tree of life to all that grab hold of it, which means that the Torah, which is the wisdom of God, those that study Torah, connect and grab a hold of the tree of life. It's called the tree of life. Why the tree of life? Why not the tree of food or the tree of wealth or whatever it is? Because Torah affords one life, an enduring life, both in this world and in the world to come. Therefore, that's why the Gemara tells us that when a person lies, he does not merit to receive or to be a part of the divine presence. What does it mean to be a part of the divine presence? So we know, Kabbalistically speaking, for those who are familiar in our shiurim with the 10 emanations and the 4 worlds, the highest world is the world of Atzilut. Malchut Atzilut, what's called the last level, of Atzilut, the last of the 10 emanations of Atzilut, Malchut Atzilut is called Shekhinah, the divine presence, because it causes everything that it received from the other 9 emanations of godliness and to draw it down to this world, draw it down to Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, meaning to say that that is the attribute or the sphira, the dimension by which receives all of the creative powers of God and wishes to give it over. The world of Atzilut is the world of nullification. There are no entities, there's no spirit, there's no physicality there whatsoever. That is a world of absolute nullification. We said in one of our shiurim that the Kabbalists teach us that the world of Atzilut is a world kulotov, a world fully good. The world of Beriah, the world that begins the concept of creation, which is called the world of creation, is a world that has majority good and a little bit of bad. The next world of Yetzirah is half-half, and this world is majority bad and a little bit of good. And we're not going to go over the whole shiur, but you're welcome to go and listen to the shiur. It's called the Kabbalistic definition of evil. What is evil? And we mentioned evil. People think evil is holding some sort of a sword and ready to kill. Evil simply means a lack of light, lack of spirituality, lack of understanding and consciousness and awareness of spirituality, and lack of nullification before godliness. When you nullify yourself before godliness, you attach yourself to godliness, you attach yourself to the essence of good, to the essence of light, and that which endures, and the essence of truth. But when we attach ourselves more to the material world, the more materialism that there is, the less good there is. And again, the definition of good and bad here is nullification before God, awareness of godliness. The more awareness of godliness we have, the more we nullify ourselves before God. The less ego there is, the less selfishness there is, the less self there is. So in the world of Bria, there are spiritual creations, but those spiritual creations are nullified before God. In the world of Atzilut, there are no physical creations whatsoever. There are not even spiritual creations. There's only the 10 emanations of God. And as it says in Tikkunei Zohar, he and his causation and he and his energy or light is one. Even God's causation, even God's attributes are also absolutely nullified with him. Whereas the lower worlds are not as nullified, because there begins to be the source or the root of existence. And where there is existence, there begins to be less of a nullification before God. And this is a false perception, because really everything is nullified before God. Nothing can exist without God. We're all absolutely dependent upon God. The only question is, how conscious are we of that, or not conscious of that? In the higher world, the world of Atzilut, the emanations of God are totally nullified and conscious of that they don't have any sense of self whatsoever, and therefore it is true, and therefore it endures forever. Lower worlds do not endure in their state as it is until it becomes rectified and until the coming of Mashiach. And that's why the Kabbalists call it a little bit of evil, a little bit more of evil, and a lot of evil. Evil meaning to say, sheker, falsehood. There's a misrepresentation here. We see things not really the way they are. We see physical entities, but we don't see the divine spark that enlivens it. And that's what it means. A liar, someone, what is a person who lies? A person who lies, he's less aware of God's presence. That's why he lies. He lies to someone because he wants to get the better of him. Or he lies to someone because he's afraid of the consequences. So he's more concerned about a human being, how the human being will react, rather than God. And he's less aware of the presence of God. He's more aware of your presence, your reactions, or what I can get out of you, or how I can get out of a situation, and not concern himself, is not conscious of the divine presence. Such a person obviously is not nullified, to the divine presence, to the Shekhinah, to the divine presence. He lives and exists within the realm of falsehood. And that's why this world is called Anma de Shikra, the world of falsehood. That's why this world is called Anma de Rubara, that this world is a world of majority bad. When we say majority bad, again, the definition does not necessarily mean, even though there's plenty of bad in the world, does not necessarily mean everybody walking around with a gun ready to blow someone else's head off, like in some countries. It simply means more awareness of self, more existence in the material world, less awareness of the spiritual world, and that does not endure. That state cannot endure, because that is not godliness. That which enlivens the world is godliness, as we mentioned on many, many occasions. And that's why, because it doesn't endure, by definition, it's associated with death, lack of life. And that's the story in the Gemara that tells us that the people in that city merited to have long life, and he who came and joined that city, who wasn't as careful, did not merit to have long life. Because what is life? Life is something that endures, or enduring life, or life that is both is represented in this world and in the world to come, is something that endures. Life itself. We will speak about this a little bit more. We'll understand the connection to death a little bit more later on. There's a very interesting Midrash Tanhuma about this week's parasha, the parasha of Vayetze. Last week's parasha. Last week's parasha, God reveals himself to Yaakov. He goes to sleep, Har Moriah. He flees from his brother, and God reveals himself. We asked last week the same question: why did God reveal himself at that point and not before, when he was on a spiritual high, so to speak, when he was studying? Whereas here, when he's fleeing Esav at the threat of death, God reveals himself. Why at this point? So the Midrash says a very interesting thing. Midrash Tanhuma. And the Midrash says as follows: the students asked of Rebbe, what is the law regarding one who kills unintentionally? Someone who kills unintentionally, inadvertently. Someone, for example, threw a rock, and that rock hit someone, and that person, God forbid, unfortunately died. What's the law? The law is that he has to go in exile. He has to separate himself, even though that it was by accident. But the Torah doesn't view things like the secular world does. He has to go into exile. He has to live there until the death of the high priest. We don't have time to explain what's the connection between the high priest. But he has to live there, he has to reflect, he has to separate himself from his family. He caused someone to be separated from his family. He now has to be, to a smaller degree, separated from his family, from his community, from his friends. Live amongst the Leviim, people are much more spiritual, and reflect, why did this accident come through my hands? If a negative thing came through your hands, even inadvertently, it says that the righteous don't sin even inadvertently, because they're so in control of themselves that God does not allow an accident to come through their hands. If an accident, especially one as devastating as this, as cutting short someone's life, came through a person, one has to reflect, why did it happen through me? And of course, we know that divine justice is such, is that if that person passed away, obviously his time came. But why did it have to come through me? Why couldn't he have just passed away in his sleep? And of course, every detail in a person's passing is exacting. But why through me? That's a question that person has to ask himself. As it says, Megal Gilin Zechut al Yedei Zakai. Merit is always drawn and follows those that have merit. In order to have merit, you need merit. Like the famous story of Rabbi Levi Yitzhak of Berditchev and Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. that were collecting money for a ransom. And the deadline was hours away. And when they heard about the situation, they quickly made a list of the people in the town, and they realized that it's impossible to be able to collect this money in time from the people of this town because there's not enough money amongst them. But there is one wealthy person that could surely afford to help redeem the captives and ransom them. But everybody said he's a miser. Don't even bother to go there, because what he'll give you a dime. He'll give you a 10-cent piece. That's all he'll give you. It's a waste of time. Don't even bother. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi insisted that he's going, and not only is he going to him, but he's going to him first. But everybody told him, don't waste your time, go to everybody else. If you want to waste your time afterwards. But he insisted he's going to go to him first. He knocked on the door, and the two rabbis were there, and he greeted them with great respect, and he invited them into the sitting room, and he offered them tea, and etc., and etc. What brings me the honor of the two rabbis coming and visiting me, and they told him the whole story, and he seemed to be sympathetic. But at the end of that, when they got up to leave, he said, wait a minute, I'm going to give you a donation, I want to participate in this mitzvah. He went and he got an old green penny, which is old. Now the other rabbi with Rabbi Shneur Zalman wanted to tell him where to go. But he said, hold your peace. And he accepted that old rusted coin, and he said, thank you very much, and may God bless you. Like the man gave him $100,000, like he gave him the whole amount. And he thanked him profusely, and the man shut the door, and the two rabbis started to walk down the steps. The other rabbi turned to Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, and he said, well, what's going on? We just wasted our time. He said, it's all right. All of a sudden the door opens, and the man calls him back and he says, you know what, I really want to participate a bit more. And he gives him a bit more. And all of a sudden, sends him away, and I'm making the story short, gives him more, until he gives him the whole amount. And then, Rabbi Levi Yitzhak turns to Rabbi Shneur Zalman and he says, do you know something that I don't know? And he says, I'll tell you the story. This man was poor. But he collected penny for penny, and he began to trade. And when he traded, the very first penny that he made in profit, he put it aside. It was very precious to him. The very first, you see in stores, when the people put up their dollar bill or the $5 bill, the first one that entered the cash registry, that's the mazal dollar. You know what I mean? Let it continue. Let it pour in from there. And he said, so too with this guy. And when people came to charity, to ask for charity, what would he give him? He gave him the most precious thing that he had, that one coin. But people looked at it and they said, what are you embarrassed? And they threw it at him. And he was so upset. These people don't appreciate what a penny is. I collected penny for penny in order to get myself to where I am, and they have no appreciation. I swear that I will not give anybody anything, only if they receive that penny. And sure enough, people came to him, and he got a reputation. They give him a penny, they throw it back in his face, and it's that same penny. That's why it's old, that's why it's rusted, it's that same penny. Over time, his whole heart and ability to give was locked. Because he hasn't given in such a long time, didn't give charity for such a long time. He couldn't give anymore. As we said, Megalgelin zechut al yedei zakah, you need to have merit to have another merit, to have another mitzvah. And I realized this. I realized that this was the root of his problem, of his miserliness. Be'etzem, intrinsically, is not a miser. But there's something that caused it. He lacked, over time, because of his resentment, he lacked merit. And we opened up that merit. And when we received it, we opened up the merit. That caused him to give another merit, another small amount. And that opened up again his merit to give another amount, until he became his former self, a generous person that he really was. Megalgelin zechut al yedei zakah, you need a merit. One merit begets another merit. Therefore, someone, God forbid, who has a negative thing that happened through him, Ask yourself, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Shouldn't happen. If it happened, you have to introspect. And you have to go to exile. And in Israel, you had cities of what's called cities of refuge, where you go there and you go there to exile. That's where you live. Inadvertent killers go there. That's where they got to live. That's their new home. So listen to what he answers. Rebbe answers these students. Then he continues and he says, all of a sudden, the Midrash digresses for a moment, goes off topic, and says as follows. An unrelated, seemingly, statement says that Yaakov fled to Haran to escape his brother. That's what the Midrash continues. The Midrash says that the students ask Rebbe, what happens to someone who kills inadvertently? They must go, the halakha is you must go to a town of exile, Arei Miklat, city of refuge. And all of a sudden it says, Yaakov fled to Haran to escape his brother. Why? What's the connection? And it says, when Hashem saw his distress, he revealed himself to Yaakov in the dream of the ladder. You all remember the dream of the ladder. So what's the connection? If the Midrash groups them together, there must be a connection. So does the Midrash seem to indicate somehow that Yaakov fleeing his brother had something to do with the city of refuge, or the concept of killing inadvertently? And if it does, if there is a connection, who should be fleeing? Yaakov should be fleeing. Esav should be fleeing, because Esav sent Eliphaz to go and kill Yaakov. If anybody has to flee, and don't forget, if a person also kills without proper witnesses, and it's not established whether it's premeditated, but we know that he killed, but we don't know whether it's premeditated, he also has to go into exile. He also has to go to the city of refuge. If anybody was deserving or needed to go into exile, refuge, it's who? It's Esav. Yet what ended up happening? We find that Yaakov has to leave his father and mother's house. He has to leave Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, and he has to go into exile. True, it was for the purposes of getting married, but why could not Yitzhak send an emissary to Lavan to bring one of his daughters or both his daughters to marry Yaakov? Why did he have to go there? Why did God make it in a manner that he had to go there? We know that the reason why he went there is because his mother knew that Esav was conspiring to kill Yaakov. So she went to Yitzhak and she says, listen, I don't want my son marrying from the children of the place. They're corrupt. Send him to the house of my brother to marry one of his daughters. And Yitzhak agrees, and he blesses him. And he gives him the blessing of Abraham. And he goes on his merry way. Why did not Yitzhak say, no, he doesn't need to go anywhere. I'll send a messenger with great gifts, like my father did with Eliezer, and I'll bring them back over here. Now, he did not know, at least from what we are told, from consciously, that Esav was conspiring to kill Yaakov. He sent him for the purposes of marriage. It was Rivka that knew and insisted that he leave, but she didn't tell him the reason. So as far as Yitzhak is concerned, there's no need for him to run away. He can stay right over here. We send a messenger, bring him over here, see if he wants to come. What do I have to send him out for? It's clear here that Yaakov, of all people, he was exiled from his land. Why was he exiled from his land? Seemingly there is a connection to the inadvertent killing, exiling, being exiled, the city of refuge, and Yaakov more so than Esav. Now we know that Esav and Yaakov were two different people. They're opposites. Titenem et leYaakov, Hesed laAvraham. Every one of our forefathers represented another attribute. Abraham represented that of, he was an epitome of kindness. Yitzhak was avodah, was service, gvura, justice and strength and standing up to difficulties and pressures. And Yaakov is midat tiferet, beauty, Torah, and truth. Truth. En emet ela Torah. Truth is found in Torah. This is Yaakov. Titen emet le Yaakov. Yaakov was the embodiment of truth. Esav is the exact opposite. What did Esav always do? He always tried to fool and to lie to his father that he was righteous, to call favor with him. He always pretended to be righteous by asking all different types of difficult halachic queries and questions, almost indicates as if he was interested in the answer. Who doesn't want their child to come up to them and ask them, must I tithe this and give charity for this? And is this obligated in the tithing of the charity? Oh, what a beautiful son I have. He's so concerned about giving charity and tithing. He's so meticulous in halakha. You think he's a big tzaddik? This was Esav. He kept on wanting to fool his father and call favor with his father. He always asking these intricate halachic questions if he cared. He just went and stole and raped, but when he comes to the house of his father, he asks him about intricate laws. Surely if you kill and you rape and you steal, you're not interested in little details. Do we dip the hamotzi 3 times in the salt, or is once enough? Can you imagine? Do we tithe salt? Do you need to take 10% and give salt to charity? If you got buckets of salt, you bought sacks of salt, do I need to tithe it? What are you talking about? Go worry about the 10 Commandments first. You're worrying about this. So he was the epitome of falsehood. And Yaakov was the epitome of truth. In Pri Tzadik, he explained this midrash in a very fascinating and beautiful way. Pri Tzadik, he writes that there is a link. Why is there a link? He says because where does the concept of death come from? Premortal sin. What happened in premortal sin? God told Adam not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. For on the day you eat from it, you shall surely die. Adam warns Hava not to touch from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. What's a safeguard? Let's not even go near there. Tells her, don't touch it. You touch it, we're going to die. The snake, the serpent, which is the embodiment of the enticing angel of death, or the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination on the animalistic drives, were not yet an intrinsic part of man. There was something external to him. It was superimposed. It wasn't like we have tendencies and drives and desires and sometimes malicious thoughts or ideas, or we get angry at someone, we want to take revenge or whatever the case may be. It was superimposed. By us, it's no longer superimposed. It's a part of us. When Adam was created, it was so perfect that there had to be equilibrium in the world, there had to be negativity in the world, but it was superimposed. It came from the outside. And that was the embodiment of the snake. Why snake? We discussed why many years ago. And so the snake comes to entice and to deceive Hava. What does he tell her? He says, why don't you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and bad? And he starts to tell her, the whole reason why God told you not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and bad is because God doesn't want you to be like him. God doesn't want you to be a superpower because there's something mystically powerful about this tree. If you eat this tree, you'll become godlike. God doesn't want any competition. Eat from the tree, don't worry. He says, no, even if we touch the tree, we'll surely die. And he pushes her on the tree to show, you didn't die. Eat from the tree. Of course, Adam told her, don't touch the tree. As a warning, as a safeguard. That's why the Hachamim are very careful when they make safeguards. They never say, this is biblically ordained. This is a safeguard. We're doing the safeguard. Muktzah on Shabbat is a safeguard. Don't touch a hammer because we may forget. And we walk by and we see that there's a nail sticking out. Oh, I'll bang that nail in. And then you desecrated Shabbat. The hammer, no problem with the hammer. But the rabbis made different fences and safeguards. They never say that this is a biblical commandment. You're not allowed to, because the Torah says you should not add or subtract. But the Torah does give authority to the Hachamim to guard my God, as it says. Guard my God. My God is the Torah, and the Hachamim have the authority to make a guard a fence for that. Anyway, the point is that the whole concept of how death was introduced to the world was how? Through what? Through lies, through deception. And what does it say? She saw that the fruit was good to eat. You don't eat a fruit because it looks good to eat. You eat a fruit because it tastes good. It's not. The looks good to eat means to say, intellectually, the idea appealed to her. The lies and the falsehood and what the lies that the snake was pushing, peddling, appealed to her. Oh, I'll eat from the tree of if someone comes up to you and says, do you want to see Avraham Avinu? What would you not do to see Avraham Avinu? What would you not do to see the angel of God? What would you not do to see the divine presence? What would you not do to experience prophecy? Anybody who thinks a little bit about what prophecy is or the divine presence will give anything to feel that. Even once. So he comes along and he says, not only are you going to see angels, not only are you going to see the divine, you will be divine. So it was all through falsehood. And of course, when they ate the tree of knowledge of good and bad, the concept of bad, which is an external thing, it's only there for a purpose, for a goal. It's not an intrinsic thing for itself, and it was not meant to. It doesn't exist forever because it's falsehood. Falsehood cannot exist forever. Does not endure. As soon as we ate from it, we can no longer live forever because it's part of us. Until such time we rectify and remove and banish evil from the world and negativity from the world, only then death will be removed from the world. But until such time, there is death in the world. So death is directly linked and associated with falsehood and lying, because it was responsible for bringing death to the world. If it wasn't for the falsehood and lying of this primordial sin, of the snake, there would not be death in the world. Comes Yaakov, and Yaakov is the epitome of truth. And his mother tells him that, listen here, you must go and you must mislead your father. Mislead my father? I don't want to mislead my father. You have to, because he intends on giving the blessings to Esav. You know, if you give a gun to a violent person, it's dangerous. According to halakha, you must do everything possible to remove danger or threat, even lying. If you need to lie, you have to lie. There are certain times that halakha allows for lying. So Rivka told him, can you imagine what will be if Esav will get the blessings? First of all, A, he's not deserving. B, he doesn't want the blessings of Abraham. He himself sold the birthright. He's not interested. He scorned the birthright. And can you imagine if he makes him the master, which as the blessing says, your master, your ruler? Evil will overpower good in the world. She didn't want that. So she figured, in this case, it is permitted to. Why it had to come about this way, the blessings. We gave a shiur about this one time. The blindness, why was Yitzhak rendered blind? Why did he have to be blind? Why couldn't he just be revealed the truth? He's not fitting, etc. We gave shiur on that. I can't remember the topic. Something about, I can't remember no, not good eye, bad eye. Eyesight, something about eyesight. It's one of the shiurim. You can get it on the internet.
Your father, that he was more deserving, and how?
Many reasons why. Many reasons why. We covered some of them. Yeah, we covered some of them. But anyway, the point is she figured that in this case, it's necessary to deceive. There's also a Kabbalistic reason that sometimes the greatest blessing have to be enclosed in the clothing or the garments of evil, in order to be able to redeem the sparks that exist within evil as well. For example, look at Mashiach. Mashiach comes through the David HaMelech, through the whole story of Bathsheba. It's a dubious story. Yes, of course, we know everything that he did was according to halakha, etc. But everything was clothed in dubious circumstances. What about Yehuda and Tamar? Also, the whole story in this week's parasha, of which Mashiach comes from this very story. Dubious. Moab, Ruth, that is the great-grandmother of David HaMelech, that she was a convert. Mashiach comes from her. Where does she come from? She comes from the whole story of Lot and incense. So, yes, she converted and everything, but we see that the deepest secrets were particularly garbed in dubious things. This is true as well, but we don't have the time to elaborate on it now. As far as Yaakov is concerned, this is falsehood. This is lying, this is deception, the very opposite of who he is and what he is. And his mother is putting him in a situation of which, rightly so, because later on we see that God himself acknowledged the blessings. When he did battle with the angel, and he asked, and he did not let the angel, he says, bless me, meaning to say, acknowledge that the blessings are by right. And the angel says, yes, you receive the blessings by right. And later on when he meets Esav also tells him you're deserving of the blessing. Yitzhak also never chastised him or reprimanded him. And he blessed him again afterwards. Not angry at him, No, he blesses him again. And which blessing does he give him? Not the physical blessings. Because the physical, the spiritual blessings, that was not for negotiations. Even though Yaakov and Rivka did not know it at the time, but later on the Birkat of Abraham, which was the main blessing, may God give you the blessing of Abraham, which was the inheritance of the land and the spiritual mantle, that was always destined for him. So we see that Yitzhak acknowledged it, and God himself acknowledged it. So Rivka was absolutely right. But from Yaakov's perspective, he was nervous because he is the epitome of truth. He had a difficulty with that. He struggled with that. And notice the very person who represents truth has to struggle with that and is thrown in a situation where he has to do battle with falsehood and lies. And he has to deal with Lavan, that he was a notorious liar. Live with him for 20 years. That's a real test. Anyway, so she convinces him and he says, what am I going for? I'm going to get a blessing. Maybe it'll be a curse for me. She says, no, it's not going to be a curse for you. If anything, if there is a curse, anything negative or damaging, let it come upon me, she says. So she convinces him. He goes and he puts on hairy clothes of a goat and whatever and covers over here. That way if his father touches him, his father was blind at the time. And he blesses him. Now he has to run away. And when he runs away, he's chased by Eliphaz and he's almost killed. And he has to go into exile. And all of his possessions are taken away. He's literally bereft of friends, bereft of family, bereft of funds. No money, no nothing, left without anything. He's a fugitive. He's worse than the guy who is going to the city of refuge. He's running away. Why is he running away? Esav should be the one running away. He didn't kill anybody. You deceived. And he thought to himself, because I was involved in deception, even though it was for the sake of heaven, because I was involved in deception and lies are rooted in primordial sin. And it was primordial sin that brought death to the world. Maybe I am increasing falsehood in the world. And if I'm increasing falsehood in the world, I'm increasing death to the world. And thus I am deserving of exile. I'm deserving the punishment of inadvertent killer. Because a guy who is an adverted killer didn't kill on purpose. Therefore he's sent to exile. I didn't lie on purpose. I was thrusted into a scenario of situation in which my mother felt that it was the right thing to do. And her arguments were very compelling, spiritually, halachically, whatever you want. And they were. And she was right, spot on. 100%. We see it through everyone because everybody acknowledged. The angel, God, Yitzhak, Esav himself, all acknowledged that the blessings are his rightfully. Not through deceit you receive the blessings by right, and your name is no longer Yaakov, meaning to say you have Yaakveni, how would it translate in English, Yaakveni, Moshe? You have stumbled me, caused me to stumble, or got the blessing through subterfuge, through pulling me back. No, Yisrael, you are Sar El, you are a minister of God, you are deserving. But he didn't know that. He didn't feel that. He felt like he's going into exile, and he thought himself, the one that is the representative of truth, thought that he was associated with falsehood. And falsehood is directly connected to death. It was responsible for death. And what is falsehood? Falsehood is the concealment of godliness. Why is this world called world of falsehood? Because this world is a world that most conceals godliness, and that we don't see the truth. We have to think and ponder and meditate, come to the conclusion very deeply and hard, and if we're lucky, not only reveal our intellectual connection to Hashem, but our soul connection to Hashem, which is even higher and is on the level of seeing God, so to speak. But that takes a lot of work and a lot of refining and a lot of prayers. Doesn't come naturally. For us, physicality comes naturally. And physicality, by definition, is concealment of godliness. For man does not live on bread alone. Man lives upon the utterance of God. We think we're eating bread, and the bread's got different minerals and different whatever it has, physical components, and that sustains me. Yes, it does. But it is the divine spark that enlivens it and dictated that the bread will have this and that my body needs this and will be enlivened by that. If God desired that I'll eat grass and I'll be sustained by grass, I will eat grass sustained by grass. Like Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, his daughter came to light candles that were very poor. And by accident, she put vinegar instead of oil. And she lit the candles couldn't light. And he said, what's the problem? Who commanded that oil must burn? Who gave it to the Constitution that it burns? He who commanded oil to burn, let him command vinegar to burn. He lived on a different plane. Godliness was so revealed in his home, in his life, in his house. It made no difference, vinegar or oil. This world did not constitute a concealment to godliness at all to him. It's no contradiction. Oil, vinegar, oil, it's the same thing. He only saw the breath of God. He saw the word of God that enlivens everything. By him and on his level, made no difference. There was no concealment of godliness. And a miracle happened, and the vinegar lit instead of the oil. He lived on a totally different plane. He lived on a realm of miracles. Godliness wasn't concealed in his world. But by us, godliness is concealed. And that's falsehood. And that's why this world is a world of falsehood, of lies. And that's why in this world, until the coming Mashiach, there is a concept of death. And all of that is rooted in the deception of premortal sin. And Yaakov thought that he was increasing the power of premortal sin, the impurity of the world, the falsehood, and thus death. And thus he's like an inadvertent murderer that is perpetuating the concept or the purpose of death. Remove the reason why there's death in the world, there will be no death. And that is falsehood. When there's no longer any falsehood in the world or false perceptions, when we see godliness and understand godliness and are nullified before godliness, then there is no falsehood in the world. And thus falsehood is removed, and thus death is removed. Death will be removed from the face of the earth forever. And thus he's perpetuating. He's perpetuating death. It's like it says that the Bet HaMikdash, the second Bet HaMikdash, why was it destroyed? Because of baseless hatred. Remove the cause, the symptom is taken away. the destruction is taken away. Exile is taken away. We are exiled because of baseless hatred. Remove the cause, the symptom is also removed. So to remove the cause of death, the symptom of the cause is falsehood, concealment of godliness. The symptom is taken away, death is taken away. Increase the cause, you're increasing the symptom. You are perpetuating the symptom. He felt that this is why he's in exile, like an inadvertent murder. What an unbelievable connection that the Pri Tzaddik writes. Tzaddik HaKohen Melublin. I merited last year to visit his grave, so I have a very exciting connection to his teachings. That's why God came to him then, to comfort him, to bless him, to tell him things are okay, it's not as you think, it's okay. I orchestrated all of this because it needed to be done, particularly in this way for some of the reasons that we mentioned today, and other reasons that we mentioned in other shiurim, which is of course not the topic of tonight. I orchestrated all this. He comforted him. He came, he revealed himself to him to show that God's protection is upon him. He's okay, he's fine, he's spiritual, and God is with him, and God gave him the promises of protection and being with him, and that he will succeed, and etc. That's why God revealed himself at that point in time, to comfort him. It's interesting to note that we said before, midvar sheker tirhak. From any matter of falsehood you should distance yourself. It doesn't say from lies. Midvar, dvar is also dibur, comes from the word dibur. Dibur means any words of falsehood. But dvar, kadavar could be any matter. Which means not just a lie, living a lie, seeing a lie, understanding or relating to the world in a manner of a lie, of falsehood, or concealment of godliness. That is also something that we need to distance ourselves. Rav Zusha Manipoli says a very interesting thing. Midvar sheker. The literal translation is midvar sheker tirhak. From matters of falsehood you shall distance yourself. Midvar sheker. From matters of falsehood, tirhak. You will cause a distance and a barrier between you and God. Tirhak, you will become distant in the eyes of God, so to speak. Which is true. As we said that the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, page 97 I think it is, that four do not merit to see the divine presence. And the divine presence means to say, what does it mean to see the divine presence? What are you seeing? You're nullified before God. You feel the presence of God. You're conscious of the presence of God in your life. You live godliness. But if you live falsehood and you're not conscious of God's presence, then obviously you are very, very distant from that. And for this reason we find tzedek tiridov, a person must always pursue justice, righteousness, and truth. Tiridov, you must pursue it. We're not just saying about truth and justice and the right thing. We're saying live a world of justice. Like the famous, it was one time a student of Mendel of Kotsk, where a person was attracted to him and went to him and studied by him. And when he came back, his father asked him, so what did you learn? So he had to travel such distance to go and to learn. What did you learn? He said, I learned that a Jew is not allowed to steal. Not allowed to steal, that's what you learned. You're a great scholar, you know hundreds and hundreds of pages of Talmud by heart. That's what you went for, that's what you wasted your time for. And so he comes and he asks the kitchen hand, the lady in the kitchen that helps his wife. He says, tell me, can you explain to me, do you know the commandment of not stealing? She says, yes, of course, you're not allowed to steal. And you know it? She says, yes. So that's what you went to learn, something that every simpleton knows, someone who's uneducated knows. And he says, no, it's a big difference. She learned not to steal from others. I learned not to steal from myself. Which means to say that the pursuit of justice is not just a pursuit of justice for others and the right to right or wrong for others and and someone was lied to or trampled or taken advantage of. It's not to do the wrong thing by you as well. And that goes again to the core of what we mentioned before, of the concept of leading a lie, living our lives as a lie or as a lack of perception of godliness. And for this reason, the Torah commands that you know that the Kohen had the breastplate, and on this breastplate he put the name of God behind it, and it was corresponding to his heart, and there he got revelations from God. The Torah tells us, "V'lo yizah ha'choshen mi'al ha'ephod." The choshen, the breastplate, should not be removed ever from the ephod. The ephod was the tunic that held it together, and that tunic sat here on the chest, which is corresponding to the heart. What does that mean? Ephod, spelt in the most simplest form without the vav, aleph pei daled, is the same numerical value as peh, mouth. Our heart and our mouth must be one. Our mouth and our heart must be one. We must always speak truth. So what do we learn? The Baal Shem Tov says that every mitzvah, even though God may have commanded it only in particular circumstances or to particular people, like the breastplate was only for the Kohen and only in the time of the temple, what relevance does it have to me? Every mitzvah has a spiritual component. That Izal also says this. Every mitzvah has a spiritual component that applies to every single one of us. So although the breastplate had to do with the Kohen, with the high priest, not only in the temple, but it applies to every single one of us. And what is that? And that is that the breastplate, which represents a divine revelation and truth and the pursuit of justice, must be, and the breastplate itself is the numerical value of peh. Ephod, the tunic, is a numerical value of peh. Right? Aleph Pei Dalet, which is 85, is Peh is 85. Peh and Hey, Peh is 85, which means that our hearts and our mouth must always be consistent. We must always strive to say the truth, and that our heart says what is in our heart, and our heart feels sincerely what it is that we say. We have to be sincere about our prayers. Our prayers must be infused with our emotions. It's interesting to note that the sages tell us, Tzaddik gozer v'kadosh baruch hu mekayem. A righteous person decrees something and God fulfills it. Why? Because the righteous person is very careful with truth and with not perpetuating falsehood. And because of that, Hashem so loves that and so respects that when he says something, when he actually says something, it will be because he never lies. Because you don't lie, then God will make it that he won't lie, so to speak, that when he blesses someone, that blessing will be fulfilled, because he's so careful with lying, with distancing from lying. And that's what it says, Lo yahel devaro. A person should not lo yahel devaro, not break his words, not cause his words to be mundane and unholy. Kol hayotze mipiv ya'aseh. Everything that comes out of your mouth you should do. Reinterpreted, he who is careful with his mouth, kol hayotze mipiv, everything that comes out of his mouth, ya'aseh, he shall do. Not he shall do the person, he shall do, Hashem will do, Hashem will fulfill. In other words, we can read the verse in two ways. Lo yahel devaro, a person should never transgress or not fulfill his words. Kol hayotze mipiv ya'aseh, everything that comes out of your mouth, you shall do. You said you're going to do this. You said you're going to come. You do it. Come, do it. Or it can be read as Lo yahel devaro, he who does not demean his words. Kol hayotze mipiv, everything that comes out of his mouth, ya'aseh, Hashem does. Hashem will fulfill. And that's why the power of the tzaddikim, because they are so careful, not just not to speak falsehood, not to perpetuate falsehood. And by not perpetuating falsehood, you are removing and banishing the cause to the symptom being death. Because tzaddikim are connected to Hashem, connected to the Torah, and thus connected to life and not death. And for this reason, God so respects their words that when they do say something or make a blessing, God brings it to fruition. Okay, we'll stop here. Yes.